We're building a twin turbo drag and drive truck entirely out of junkyard parts. And today we're building the coolest junkyard LS that you can get your hands on. A 6.2 liter LS3, sort of. It's technically an L92 from an Escalade, but mechanically they're more or less the same thing. Like I think the valves are different in the cylinder head or something like that. Different intake. More or less it's the same, especially by the time we're done with it. So here's where we're at. That is the Scrapyard truck. It's made from like 3 different trucks, has a really cool chassis underneath it. We've got coilovers. You can learn more about that on my channel, but we've got a ton of work into the chassis, and now we are working on the engine. Last time we completely disassembled this down to the bare block. We got everything really clean, prepped, and ready to go back together. Now, the whole reason why we're taking the junkyard engine apart, well, there are 2 reasons technically, but the main one is because we need to remove the, where did I put it? The 58 tooth reluctor wheel from the crankshaft, this guy here, and we need to replace it with a 24 tooth version. Now, that's because we're installing a Gen 4 engine in a Gen 3 truck. I absolutely cannot stand using aftermarket conversion boxes. They work, I just don't like them. So that's why we took this whole thing apart. And the second reason is because we can clean everything and prep it and make me happy. So this was a pretty easy process. I've actually never done it before. We just heated the old reluctor wheel up a little bit, kind of tapped it off. The new one I got from Michigan Motorsports, along with all the other replacement parts that we're gonna be using today. By the way, great prices. They shipped it really quick too. So I picked up the reluctor, and from Goodson, I grabbed this product here, this is pretty important because you can't line up the reluctor properly to the crank without it. There's a pin there, which goes into the crank, the blind hole, and there's a little hole there. That guy goes in, and basically, that's how, come on, right there. Boom, perfect fit. That's how everything lines up. I stuck the reluctor in a cheap toaster oven that I got from Walmart for like 400 degrees. We got the reluctor nice and toasty, and it slid right on. The tool worked perfectly, so we are officially timed and ready to start our engine assembly process. This has been cleaned up. The pistons and rods, they've all been cleaned up. We're going to be reusing the bearings and the rings, but we are going to gap them. But let's start by getting the crankshaft stuck back in the block, and we'll go from there. We have the crankshaft installed. It's torqued to spec, it spins freely. And if you know me, you know there's one very important step that we skipped. And I feel great about it. It's sort of freeing not to take those extra steps. Now, I didn't check the main bearing clearance. Will this bite me in the butt later on? Maybe, probably not. And I'm sorry, Pat, I did not check it this time around, but here's the deal. We have the original bearings from this engine. They looked in great shape, by the way, going back in their original positions with an OEM fastener. Now, if I was changing to fresh bearings, 100% would have measured it. If I was upgrading to ARP main studs that have a higher clamping force, definitely would have checked it because we probably would have had to get the mains line honed. But original bearings, original position, original OEM fastener. So we are going to send it, as they say in the junkyard world. I did verify the thrust clearance, the crankshaft, right at 4.5 thousandths, well within spec. And now we're moving on to the one thing that you probably should check when you're building a junkyard boost motor, or any boosted motor for that matter: piston ring and gap. So this is cylinder number 7. I have the first 3 done already. This is the top ring, and it's probably hard to tell because, I'll get my flashlight out. It's probably hard to tell because it's so dark and it's such a small gap, but right there at the end is a microscopic gap. You do not want the ends of the piston ring to like touch under heat and load, and that's what happens. Under heat they expand, that gap gets closer together. A naturally aspirated engine doesn't need as much end gap on the piston rings as a boosted engine does. This one, it was close because as the miles, as the miles add up, the cylinder walls wear a little bit. We're shooting for 22 thousandths on the top and 28 thousandths on the second ring. And so I just got one of these El Cheapo Harbor Freight ring grinders. It actually works really good. I've been kind of counting, and it takes about 3.5 turns on the bottom and like 2 turns on the top to get exactly where I want it to be. So obviously every cylinder varies. We measure each and every one. So I do have a little bit of that OCD going on still, but yeah, so we're checking that. We don't want this thing to fail under boost. So let's continue along. And the reason why the second ring has a little more gap in it is because there's a certain amount of pressure from combustion that passes through the top ring, and you want to kind of relieve it on the bottom ring so it doesn't get trapped between the 2 rings. So that one is just like probably 1/1000th too small out of the box, or out of the engine. So quick grind, and we'll recheck it. Just 1.5 turns. 1.5. Now they do make special tools for squaring the rings up in the bore, but I just use a piston, flip it upside down, and go till this kind of relief for the wrist pin, which puts it about 7/8 of an inch in the hole. One more and we're good. It's a good idea to deburr the ends after you open up the gaps, just to make sure there's no sharp edges that could scratch the cylinder walls or anything like that, scratch the pistons. The other thing we're doing is installing new rod bolts. So we're going to pop the old ones out, which is pretty easy. They just literally pop right out. Rubber hammer, of course, so you don't mess up this surface. New OEM fasteners so they don't change the clamp load. Start with the oil ring. You get an upper and lower oil support rail. Making sure to stagger all the gaps. On these original rings, there's a dot which shows which side is up. The bottom ring has a little cutout on it. Top ring, dot, no cutout. Well done. Our local meteorologist's name is Chevy Chevalier. I can't help but think that's got to be a fake name. Like maybe he drove a Cavalier in high school or something. Just a short while later, the short block is ready to move on to the next phase. So, fully assembled, fully torqued, new fasteners, gapped rings. She's going to be ready for boost and ready to make some power. Speaking of power, compression ratio. This has a 10.5-to-1 compression ratio, which is a little on the high side. Not too bad, but a little on the high side for a boosted engine. If you remember, this is not like the final engine for this truck, but it's going to be in there for probably a year, year and a half or so until we get the rest of the systems built and get the truck running. Everything that I build, I always make it flex fuel. So whenever I do want to turn up the boost, I'll just run some ethanol. That way it'll combat the detonation or the likelihood of detonation on a higher compression turbo setup. And of course, because it's a little higher compression, it'll make some pretty good power. So that's the story with that, but let's continue on. Time to talk valve train. This cam I got from Eddie, it's just a used cam, Howard's. I'll put the part number up on the screen. I believe the specs are somewhere in the like 224, 230 degree duration range at 50 thousandths lift. It's got like 620, 630 lift for intake and exhaust, 115 degree lobe separation angle. So it should be a half decent all around cam, and for like 150 bucks used, I can't complain at all. The rest of the stuff we got new from Michigan Motorsports. New cam plate, lower sprocket, upper sprocket, chain dampener, lifter trays, lifters, and of course the cam bolts. We also grabbed this front cover, an LS2, LS3 style, and that's because even though this cam, back here you can see this little split, that's normally where the cam sensor gets its signal from, but this is a Gen 4 block. That's a Gen 3 platform. Normally on a Gen 3, the cam sensor sits right back here and here I guess, and reads off that little part of the cam I just showed you. There's no spot for a cam sensor in the block, but if we run a 3-bolt 1X front sprocket, we can run this timing cover, and all we gotta do is extend the wires, and that will be our cam sensor. Obviously, we just showed you the 24X conversion on the crank sensor, and all we got to do now is plug that. Instead of the 58 tooth sensor, we use the earlier 24 tooth sensor. So that's what we're doing. Let's get that cam installed. Thrust in the cam, which we do. probably shown you guys this 100 times, but this is a step I will not skip. This is checking the intake center line of the cam. I've really never had one that's been too far off, but it's peace of mind. So we've established true top dead center with this pointer, which is technically here. Now we're gonna put the dial indicator on the one lifter that I have on the intake valve, and we'll do the same thing, except we'll find peak lobe lift. We'll find 50 thousandths before, 50 thousandths after. Basically, we're checking the degree. You can Google how to do this if you want. You should do it though. Oddly enough, this is a bracket I made to hold a coolant tank or something, and this is like the most useful bracket for stuff like this because I can use it to hold a dial indicator on a block that has no iron content. All right, so the cam that we have is listed with an intake center line of 111. With this timing set that we have installed, I check it 3 times just to be sure. We have an intake center line of 113, retarded 2 degrees. That's going to raise the power band by approximately 100 RPM, or raise the RPM at which peak power occurs by about 100 RPM. So, not a big deal. I don't have an adjustable timing set. That's well within the tolerance that I am willing to accept. So, let's continue on. Fully cleaned out, fully deburred, block off plug installed on the bypass. And for valve springs, we're doing some BTR 660 lift springs. Because we get some lift in this can. So, one cylinder head completely done. Gonna repeat the same process on this side. Strip down all the valves. We'll throw away the old springs, keepers, retainers, locators, and seals. We will clean everything really well. I deburred everything. We'll do that again. Then we'll clean it, reassemble it, and then finally, we'll be ready to put it back on the engine. It's a lot of work. Now this valve train work definitely takes a lot of time because there's 16 of everything, and when you get one of those cheap Harbor Freight valve spring compressors, everything just moves around. But we got it all squared away. The heads are ready to go back on. So in summary, we've got new valve seals, new springs, retainers, keepers, locators, all that good stuff. Heads have been fully deburred all the way around. Not that that makes any bit of difference other than making my OCD a little bit happier. Valves lapped in just to kind of clean up the valve seats a little bit. Someone did ask about the sealing surface and the MLS head gaskets. Yeah, I did use sandpaper on them. Technically, you probably shouldn't do that, but if you can see kind of those circular marks there, not the old gasket impression, but the circular marks are left over from when these heads were manufactured. You can kind of see them like there because there's a big giant fly cutter that spins around and cuts the deck. But I guess short version is my sanding that I've done is smoother than the surface that has those grooves in it left over from machining. So in any case, we are ready to put the heads back on the engine, which is a big step. To keep things sealed up under boost, because again, a little bit higher compression, turbo pressure, it makes a lot of cylinder pressure inside the engine. We're using LS9 head gaskets, which are kind of like the go-to for a little bit larger bore LS stuff. These work with the 4065 bore that the LS3/L92 has. And of course, we're going to use some ARP head studs to clamp everything down together and keep the boost inside the engine instead of out. So let's carry on. Next time we see these pistons, they will either be in pieces or, well, other than that, we shouldn't have to take it apart. And I don't really want to hurt anything, so hopefully we never see these pistons again. Now obviously any sort of aftermarket fastener like an ARP stutter bolt is stronger than the torque to yield head bolts, but the reason why I am inclined to choose a stud on an aluminum, not aftermarket, on an aluminum block is because the tightening occurs not on the threads that are in the block, but the tightening occurs here. So you thread these all the way in. They have a bottoming nose. You just kind of lightly install them until it touches, and then when you apply the torque to the nut, it just pulls against these threads rather than pulling and twisting. So we're almost wrapped up with the valve train. We just got to get the rockers ready to install. Of course, like everything else, we're going to be doing some upgrades to our OEM parts. We're doing a trunnion upgrade. Pretty standard stuff. Involves replacing the original factory pivot with an aftermarket roller bearing. We're using a BTR kit. This is, well, there's no part number, but it's the BTR kit. It comes with the new trunnions themselves, a couple of tubes of these roller bearings, some C-clips to hold everything together. We have half of the engine done already. So this is kind of what they look like. Little snap ring on the outside, pivot in the middle, and I'll show you what the last 4 look like. 4 cylinders worth look like to get put back together. All right, so start with a bear rocker. That's kind of what they look like after you push out the OEM trunnion. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure trunnion is French for pivoty thing. Take the new pivoty thing, trunnion. I like to put a little assembly lube on there. Push it through, pop out the little plastic holder deal. If you line it up right, boom. They give you these perfectly shaped washers. Second bearing goes on. And I really wish I had an arbor press. That would make this really easy, but I'll just kind of get it started with a hammer gently. And finish it up in the vise. Snap ring just holds everything together. There's one pair down, only 3 left to go. I started assembling this engine on Monday morning, and it feels like Monday was forever ago, but now we have the week gone by. It's Friday afternoon, and the engine is pretty much ready to go. The truck isn't quite ready for the engine yet, but it's pretty much there. Obviously, I do have valve train on this side. You can see it is absent on this side. As soon as I got this one in, I kind of realized, you know what? You don't want to run the OEM push rods. The springs that I'm running have a seat pressure. I think seat's like what's right here? It's like 155 seat and 400 at open. So I'm gonna run a little bit better push rod. I got some BTR 11/32 chromoly push rods on the way. Those will be here Tuesday because I missed the cutoff for quick shipping on a Friday afternoon. But either way, this engine is boost ready. 6.2 liter L92 aluminum block for lightweight, still fairly strong for the power levels we're going to push this engine to. We have gapped rings for boost. We have ARP head studs and LS9 gaskets, which will keep the cylinder pressure inside the engine. We've got good valve springs that'll help control the valve train at higher RPM, and it'll keep all those things pushed back on the base circle of the cam, like the rocker arm, the push rod, and the lifter. It also has the best, maybe aside from the LS7, but the best flowing OEM cylinder heads that they ever put on these LS engines. So there you go. One boost ready LS3/L92 that's waiting for the truck. Truck's not ready. Got a lot of work to do there, but I can't wait to hear this thing run. I'm really excited about it. If I had to estimate horsepower naturally aspirated just based on some of the dyno tests that I've seen and things like that, we're probably going to be in the 470-ish maybe horsepower range at the flywheel, which will be pretty good. And of course, we're just going to cram the boost in it and go up from there. We do have a lot of work left to do on the truck, mainly at this point wiring and plumbing. So brake lines, fuel lines are the two big ones for plumbing. Wiring, we just got to get the engine harness modified for the LS3. And then I just want to get this thing running and drive it naturally aspirated at first. That'll probably only last like a week or so before I tear it apart for the turbo, but I need a function test. The way that I build stuff, I have to function test along the way. So before we get too far in the weeds, like, you know, building turbo kits and building a transmission and building the biggest, baddest fuel system that we can, I just want to make sure the thing runs and like the transfer case shifts, because we're changing everything about this truck, and it's pieced together from probably at least 10 different junkyard trucks at this point. So that's the order of operations. Side note, I don't know why I thought of this, but we are going to be running the stock L92 intake at first. They're a really good flowing intake. They'll make great power, great RPM. Someday I might put like a high ram or I think BTR actually has a cool truck intake, but that's down the road. Remember, step one is get it running.